Hello, animation fans, and welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and you're listening to episode 69. In the 69th podcast, we interviewed Jim Vanderkyle. Jim is one of our animation instructors here in our feature program, has been with us for quite some time in our program, and is a veteran to this industry, as you'll hear in this podcast. He started out in 2D. He was working on Little Mermaid. He worked on The Iron Giant with Brad Bird. Cool. And was nominated for an Annie on his work there. Jim made the transition from 2D to CG and went to work for DreamWorks for many years and worked on such films as Monsters vs. Aliens, Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2, Puss in Boots, just to kind of name a few there. And he has worked in VFX as well as an animation supervisor up in Canada at a small studio where they produce a full feature animated movie there. And so it was just a really neat opportunity to get to talk with somebody, sit down, who's been in the industry for this length of time, who's made the transition in different mediums, and just kind of pick their brains. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this podcast. Check it out. Jim, really appreciate you joining us on this podcast. As I mentioned beforehand, a couple different reasons. Obviously, one, you being one of our instructors, and you've been one of our instructors for quite some time, which is way cool. Yeah. But then also just going through your bio, and I'm looking at it, you've got 2D, you've got CG, you've got VFX, you've been animating for a long time, and it's which is a good thing. Which is a good thing for when we're talking with somebody and someone who's teaching in here. So
that's great. Yeah.
Really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great. It's great to be on talking to you, Larry. You have one of the great voices of animation.
my small contribution. Well, I appreciate that.
Awesome.
So tell us, how'd you get into animation? What was it that sparked it for you? Obviously, you started in 2D. You had some drafting skills.
Right.
How did that evolve and come into this field of animation?
Yeah, it's a very complicated question. I started when I was 32.
Okay.
I got in late.
I like to hear that though, because I've got in late too, and it's neat because I think it gives hope for people who can jump in later in life. So that's good to hear.
Yes. And I got in really late when you think about it. My first job was at Disney, actually, and I was an in-betweener on The Little Mermaid.
Wow.
So that goes way back.
That's really cool, though.
But I had no idea that I could get in. I moved to California, and my parents had moved out there, so I just came out, kind of visited them, and decided to stay. And,
where are you originally from?
The East Coast, pretty much. Yeah, I was born in Canada, but I lived in the East Coast of the United States for a while. So I got a dual citizenship.
Nice.
One of the things, I'm working in Montreal right now, so it makes it easy.
Nice and easy, yeah.
Yeah. So I moved out and I lived in Los Angeles for a while. And I didn't think I'd ever get into animation. It just never crossed my mind. And I was taking some classes in computer stuff, just how to model stuff. And then one of the girls that was in my class, she said, like, hey, you like to draw and stuff. Why don't you go check out this in-betweening class that they give? And I said, like, yeah, let me take a look at it. How much is it? It's like $80. What? How is that possible? $80? That's crazy. And it was the union that was sponsoring these classes at the time.
Wow.
Like the Cartoonist Union, Local 839. So so I did. I took some classes in in-betweening. I was being taught by Dale Oliver, who was the key cleanup guy for Meld Call.
Oh, cool.
So, man, I had a direct connection to one of the 9 old men just from that.
Right,
so, $80, it's I think a 10-week class or something like that. So I was doing that. I was learning how to flip the paper and, figuring out how to do the in-betweens. And so eventually I found out that they were hiring because they needed to finish The Little Mermaid. So I think they were halfway through production and they needed people, they needed bodies. So I did apply there. The first time I didn't get in, and then I said, like, what did I do wrong? So I went back to Dale, took another class, and just really, honed in my skills and didn't give up. Second time I got in. So that's how I got into animation at that time. And I was 32 years old, and I was a caricature artist at the theme parks before then. So I was still drawing all the time.
Oh, okay.
But I was doing caricatures.
That's awesome.
That's how I made my bread and butter.
Okay.
So yeah, so then I became an in-betweener. So at that time, there was a big gap between cleanup people and animation. It was like, if you're a cleanup, to overcome that firewall to get into animation was incredible. And for most people who were in cleanup, it was sort of like, it was a separate kind of department. Once you're in cleanup, you kind of stay there. And there were a few people who wanted to cross over, but it was always got the feeling that it was almost impossible. So I just sort of resigned to the fact that I was just going to be a cleanup guy. So I did that for 7 years.
Okay.
Now 7 years. Add that to 32. I'm 39 now. Now we're getting up there in age. So at some point, after hanging around, looking at charts and timing and watching other animators, and I decided at some point, like, I want to give this a shot. So I took some animation classes at the Union again. They were teaching them, and I forgot who was teaching it at the same time. The guy who did on the Little Mermaid, he did the evil character, the octopus witch, whatever her name was.
Oh, Ursula.
Ursula, yeah. Rubio, I think. Ruben Aquino. Sorry, Ruben Aquino. So anyway, he was teaching a class, and seemed like, okay, this is pretty logical. It makes sense. You do it this way, you do it that way. So eventually I did a couple tests on my own. I had Dan Wagner. I don't know if you know Dan Wagner.
I've heard the name. Yeah.
Yeah, he was teaching me. We were friends at that time. We were playing street hockey together. We worked in the same studio at Rich Animation. So he was teaching me. He was showing me about timing. He was very snappy timer. So he's teaching me all that. And then at that time, I was working for Rich Animation as a cleanup guy, key cleanup. I was 38, 39. And then Warner Brothers was opening up a new studio, and they needed people. And at that time, they were competing with DreamWorks to hire people, and they were siphoning off people from Disney. So I got in on a in the beginning, like an apprentice program to become an animator, and that's where I was animating with Richie Bainham, Adam Burke. Adam Burke eventually went to Pixar, and all those guys. And so we were like a new crew of people. And so my first animation feature, first time I animated, was on The Quest for Camelot.
Oh, okay.
That was my first. So that, and I was doing the incidental backgrounds, and I was under Alex Williams, who's Richard Williams' son.
Okay.
So he was the lead on that, and so I learned a lot just doing that. And then Warner Brothers was coming together with Turner Broadcasting at the time, and they were. And I think Brad Bird was trying to do his own project over there. So because of that merger, they needed someone to do the Iron Giant. So this is where Brad came in.
That's
he said,
amazing.
Okay, I'll do the Iron Giant, but I want to write the story, right? And I want to direct it. So that's what happened. They asked him to direct, and he actually rewrote the whole story. So Brad, I was just doing the incidental character. This was my second feature film. Right. So I didn't, I wasn't really that far advanced, but advanced enough that it caught the eye of Brad, and he liked some of the incidental stuff that I was doing. And so he started giving me more and more bigger work to do. So then I started getting big chunks of animation. And I did the second half of the scene. Dean Wellens did the first half. I did the second half of the dining room sequence with Hogarth and Kent. So
that's killer.
Yeah, so I mean,
I saw on your bio.
What's that?
I saw on your bio too. You were nominated for an Annie, right?
Yeah, and it was because of that work, because I had the chance, and then Brad took a chance on some of the newer animators.
Man,
that he gave stuff to Adam Burke, and Adam was doing some great stuff, and so because of that, I was nominated for an Annie Award at that point. It was my second feature film.
What do you contribute your learning curve on that to be able to get, you said this is your second feature, to be able to jump up to work on a project like that and be nominated for an Annie, what do you contribute to your success in that, in be able to do that?
I guess it's just perseverance and just a stubborn belief in yourself.
Okay.
Just constantly working. Plus, I had 7 years of watching, looking at Glenn Keane's stuff and at Disney, and working with Dale Bear, because I worked with him as a cleanup artist in his studio when he was doing commercials. So I was looking at his animation. So just by osmosis, I think you just kind of pick it up.
Gotcha.
That's why after about 7 years of it, just soaking everything up, I thought, okay, maybe I can do this.
Right. Yeah.
Just give myself a chance to do it.
That's great.
Kind of believe myself in that way. So yeah.
So what was? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that because of it was my second feature, and I didn't even know what the Annie Awards were. I got a call from Ricardo Curtis and say, "Congratulations!" I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Congratulations! Because you just got nominated for Best Character Animator for Iron Giant. I was like, what's an Annie Award? And I said, you don't know? I says, no. And so I had to look it up and find out what it was. Like,
yeah.
Shit, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Annie Award.
For those who don't know, it's like the Oscars, right?
Yeah, it's the Oscars of animation.
For animation.
Like, and I'm like, well, who else are the other nominees? Like, what? Are you crazy? Glenn Keane, Dean Wellens, and then Ken Duncan, Steve Markowski. All these guys were nominated. So, when I went to the Annie Awards, I had to get my tuxedo. And I'm sitting next to these guys, and I said, I hope I don't win. Because I don't want to go up there, because I was like, I don't know what to say.
The one guy that actually does not want to win the Annie Awards, because
exactly.
against guys like Glenn Keane and such.
Yeah, I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, what am I? Why am I sitting next to this guy? I mean, I'm just a newbie, for Christ's sake. Then,
so who ended up winning it?
Steve Markowski.
Okay.
I think that was the first time, because he did the Giant, and it was all 3D at that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think it was the first time somebody from a 3D, because 3D was in its infancy.
Right.
And it was incorporated into the movie. So yeah.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. Very cool. So what were some of the highlights of working with Brad there? Obviously, he's very well known now, and but that was his first big
His
go.
enthusiasm, I think. Also, we had a very special thing where Warner Brothers was starting to let go of the feature animation department. They didn't care anymore. They didn't put any marketing behind the Iron Giant, which everybody knows about that. Quest for Camelot didn't do that well. So they gave up pretty much after 2. And which is kind of weird, because we had a big speech a year and a half before with the CEO of Warner Brothers. So we're at Warner Brothers, and we don't give up, and we're going to make this, this big thing. We were in animation for a long time. We're going to make this studio great. But after 2 times, they just said, ask for it. We're not making any money. And they put a lot of money into it. We had really great offices. We had these beautiful animation desks that they built just for us that were like at least $2,000 each.
Gosh.
For every person. They were amazing. And then we just folded up the studio pretty much after Osmosis Jones. That was the last movie that I was on.
Gotcha.
So I was on 3 feature films, and then I switched over to 3D after that. Okay.
And from there you went to DreamWorks?
Yeah. But to go back to Brad, I mean, his enthusiasm was amazing. He knew that because the studio was, he said this in a speech to us, because sometimes he'd gather us all up and he'd give these speeches that got everybody energized, wanting to really work hard for him, and go back to our desk and animate everything. So he was saying that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Most studios really like to get their fingers in on and micromanage everything, and do some marketing survey and tell us what to do. We need this in the movie. We need that. So he says, they're leaving us alone. I could do my own movie. And says, this is incredible, guys. Let's take advantage of this, and let's do it the way we want to.
Nice.
And that's what we did. That's what you see in the screen. You see the love of every animator that wanted to animate on this movie. It just come through. Everybody was super jazzed.
That's killer. That's killer. Now, I had a chance to take a workshop with Tal Schwartzman earlier this year, who's now over at Pixar. He got to work on Incredibles 2.
Yeah.
And he worked on it with Brad Bird, and he had some cool stories to talk about with him. I'm looking forward to getting him on a podcast, I think, next. It's been a bit. But one of the things I thought was really cool about what he mentioned in regards to Brad as a director was showing his work was Brad was looking for that feeling. It wasn't just so much the motion, it was the emotion and feeling behind the shot. Was that stuff that you picked up as well during that time, or was that something that was developed later from Brad?
No, I think that's just the way he likes to work. He wants to. He's from it's kind of like, and I see myself that way too. When I think about animation, I think of myself more as an actor, you know, and not just somebody who's drawing or moving rigs around, things like that. And he always looked at it from a story point of view. He says, like, is this telling the story? You know. And the poses had to tell the story. So back then, we didn't really have screens where you could draw over. So we put everything on a whiteboard. You know? Okay. And then we project everything on a whiteboard. And so he'd come in with his little dry erase marker and draw on top of it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And then he would draw the poses that he wanted. So, like, if you get this pose here, this would be great.
So what? Okay.
So we had to remember the pose in our head.
That's what I was going to ask you. It's like you're pulling out your phone. And you're like, okay, hang on, let me just take a picture of that. Yeah.
No, we didn't have phones back then. Well, I don't think. Yeah.
You had to remember what you saw.
We had to remember pretty much what it was, or just do a little sketch of it. So
right. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, but the one thing I do want to say about Brad is that and kind of was a great thing, but also kind of a bad thing because it spoiled me. What he wanted to do is, like, one time he says, okay, we'd see the scene, and the animator would just be quiet. I'm like, we were supposed to receive our directions from the almighty director, and then he'd look at us like, well, come on guys, like, what are you doing? Come on, I want to hear from you. This is, give me your input. If you don't like what I'm saying, let me know. Because everybody was just quiet. We'll just do what you say. That's it. But he didn't want that. He wanted participation. He wanted us to fight for the scene. Like, if we saw a way of animating it, he wanted us to talk about it. So when I got hired at DreamWorks, I have this, like, yeah, we should do it this way. And, like, they're looking at me like, are you nuts? Do it the way we said it.
Just shut up, Jim.
And it's like, but wait a minute, this is what I learned from Brad. We want to wrestle for that shot and argue with the supervisor, and, like, that was a big mistake. Now,
have you found that different directors have responded with that, though, where you can kind of inch it out a little bit and, like, okay, this.
Some directors are better than others. Some directors just want it their way.
Just do it, yeah.
Just do it my way.
Gotcha.
I already thought about it. I struggle with the storyboards, and I can understand that.
Yeah, I don't got time to sit here and dialogue with you, so you can only come to my
You're going to illustrate my vision of it.
Right.
Which is sort of different because Brad wanted everybody. He wanted. I think that was part of his plan. Is, like, if everybody was enthusiastic about this, we're going to get more production out of people. As a matter of fact, he did say that. He said that things that with studios forget is that the enthusiasm that the animators and the crew put into it can make a huge difference in production in terms of people producing more. Right. So that's one of the big things is, studios need to get the scenes out in an orderly time. They need to get the quantity out at the same time. And if they're just clocking in 9 to 5, getting out, can't wait to leave, just because they're just doing their job.
Right.
You're not going to get the same kind of production value out of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what his strategy was, to get everybody really enthusiastic about going in there, because you're going to put the extra effort in. You're going to spend that, you're not going to go take 3 breaks. You're going to take only maybe 1 break.
Yeah, for sure. You're invested into it, just other than just the art form as well.
Yeah, he called it morale, the crew morale. So
gotcha.
If you have a really high crew morale, you're going to get a lot more production value. So that studios do not take that into account.
There
they
is a
just
really
want,
cool
they just
video on
want the numbers.
Vimeo, and I'll see if I can link it. But someone had taken some stuff from Brad Bird, and it's talking about that, and it hits upon that.
Hmm.
I'm kind of a little bit of a blank on that, but he talks about morale, but talking about that extra you can get out of him 4 or 5 minutes or whatever. You'll get more out of that than just So I'll see if I can find it and put it in the notes here because that reminds me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
All
think
right.
it's kind of a famous quote from Brad, but it's true. It's really, really true. It does add a lot to the studio.
Now I want to kind of come back to this here, but I'm just out of curiosity. You're an animation supervisor right now over at Sing Frog.
I was, yeah.
Okay, Singing
We
Frog.
finished. Yeah, I supervised 2 feature films.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that some of the stuff that you've incorporated as you've sought to
Yeah.
supervise? Okay.
Yeah. I did the same thing. Like it worked for Brad, and I kept trying to tell the studio too. Like, if you have a good morale, that's going to be good for production. And both times we had to kind of recreate this the crew because there was like some time in between the features. We had to let everybody go and then bring everybody back. We got some new people in. And my first feature, because it wasn't really a well-known studio, and we were doing a project that was just local from Quebec, Canada, and then so I had a lot of junior animators, so I needed some way to get everybody involved. So I personally respected everybody's contribution, and I tried to encourage their creativity.
Nice.
If I had a vision of how it should go, but if I saw somebody doing something different, and I think, hey man, that really works, I like it. So, and then that gave them confidence, and so they really liked working. So we had 2 really, really good crews on both feature films, and those people are still friends, and they hook up, for happy hours after all the time. And
Gotcha.
we had a really good crew.
Very nice.
Both times, yeah.
I think it's also important too because it's a great way for artists to learn as well. If for example, if I kind of able to speak up a little bit, and like I love that you use that term, wrestle with it.
Yeah.
Even if the director is, you come to the director's conclusion on that, you've at least now understand, and you have a greater knowledge of why they came to that, and now you're able to make better decisions as you continue to animate because you have a better understanding of where the director's coming from.
Yeah, and plus you have this, if you're a supervisor, and even if you're a director, you still have this you have a circle of what your vision is. Mm-hmm. But then when you have, inputs of 28 animators, because we had 20 animators at one point, and everybody has a slightly different kind of vision of how this could go, someone's going to bring in some very unique, take on a scene. And then why would you diminish that? Take it and accept it, and it'll just make the movie, I think, better.
Yeah.
Instead of being dictated by, the storyboards were this way, I want it exactly like the storyboard, so this is the way I exactly want it. It's like, be open to another suggestion, because it'll probably make the movie a little bit more interesting to look at, I think.
Right.
Because everybody brings in their own experience to it. It's like you're telling an actor, I want you to turn your head on frame 42. No, you let the actor go with it, and
give him some guidelines and kind of run with it.
Give something from his experience, because if he doesn't do something from his experience, it's not going to feel authentic, sincere.
Gotcha.
That's the whole point of animation. It's got to be sincere.
Yeah. No, it's a great. It's kind of funny word picture, because otherwise, you go, that sounds really, really weird to do it to an actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, from Warner Brothers, that had closed down there. Mm-hmm. Where did you? Is that when you went to DreamWorks then?
No, there was a little transition in between. I went to Sony. Sony was doing 8 Crazy Nights with Adam Sandler.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that?
I remember it. I don't know if I've actually.
It was a 2D. It was Adam Sandler. I was on there for maybe 6 months.
The Christmas one.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Hanukkah.
Yes. I do remember that one. Or Hanukkah, not Christmas, but yeah.
Yeah. And the Adam Sandler character was kind of like a guy who was very down on life and kind of pissed about everything. I guess his character arc was that he learns to, kind of like be happy again.
Gotcha. Now, off before we started, you asked me what are there some of the people I've had on the podcast, and I cannot remember offhand, but I did interview with somebody who did work on that same one. So I'll see if I can find it.
Frank, Steve Cunningham.
I'll find it and get with you on that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Because they also worked on the same. They also worked on the what was the dog one that was Rodney Dangerfield.
I worked on that too.
Okay, so that's what made me think of it. So
yeah.
I'll see if I can remember. You'd be like, oh yeah.
Rover Dangerfield.
Yeah, that's right.
He's a dog. Yeah, that was fun. I did no respect to him.
Yeah. Okay, I got to go through my list here. Remember who it was.
Okay.
Okay, so then you.
Yeah, so I did. Yeah, so after that, I went to Sony and I worked on that. I did some what do you call it? Experimental animation. Trying to figure out what the character is. We had this character that had a little limp, so we had to figure out a walk for that. So one time I was in the studio with Adam Sandler, and he's looking at over our stuff, and he looks at me, and he does this little thing where I'm supposed to give him a high five, but it's a low five, and he does it behind his back.
Okay.
And like, I guess I'm supposed to slap his hand, So I'm trying to be cool, but I just was not cool in front of Adam Sandler at all. He probably thought I was such a dork. He's like, he went to go, hey, five, hey, yeah, and I was supposed to be really cool and do the high five thing or the low five, whatever it is, and I just messed it up completely.
Have you ever seen him since?
No.
Okay, see, there you go. No big deal. No big deal. Yeah. I'll never see you again.
He'll never know who I was. He won't remember me.
Unless he's listening to the iAnimate podcast, right? Unless he's listening to the iAnimate podcast. Yeah.
I'm sure. Hey, Adam. How you doing, man? So yeah, that was my Adam Sandler story.
Nice.
But I used to bring my daughter was like I think 12, 13 at the time, and I would bring her in on weekends for overtime. And then Adam Sandler's best buddy, he was always in his movies. I don't know what his name is.
Was it Rob Schneider?
No, not Rob Schneider. He's kind of the writer as well as a producer, and sometimes he has these cameo roles. Okay. Anyway, so and she would come in with me, and then he would entertain the girls because she would go in with her girlfriend. So it was kind of funny. So she got to hang out with him and Adam Sandler.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was kind of fun. But anyway, after that was done, my heart was set on getting into 3D at that time because I kind of had a feeling things were moving in that direction.
Okay.
And before then, when I was on Osmosis Jones, the 3D department, because Drix, the 3D character, they were on like maybe the 5th floor, if I remember correctly. And so we were on the 3rd floor. So I would walk up 2 flights and I would go up to the 3D guys, like, okay, guys, whatever scenes that you don't want, I want them, like, your moving holds, your simple little takes, the 40 frame scenes that you don't want. I want to learn how to do this 3D stuff.
Okay. That's interesting because some guys
I learned. Huh?
I was going to say, that's interesting because some guys that come from the 2D had a tough transition to that. You were ramped up and ready to go to try to learn.
I was into computers, the whole thing. I had an Amiga 2000 at the time, and I was like, I was totally embracing the whole thing.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good. That's very cool.
And we learned, we had Maya 1.0 at the time because they were trying to think of Softimage or Maya. So they went with Maya 1.0 for the Iron Giant.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because the Giant was done in 3D. And so they continue. I think maybe they were at Maya 2.0 by the time Osmosis Jones came along.
Okay.
So I just took the Drix character, very simple, geometric character, very easy to do. So that's how I kind of cut my teeth on 3D.
Did you find it challenging at first, since you were able to, in essence, draw what you wanted to? Did you find using the rigs and things like that challenging, or did you pick it up pretty quick?
Not really. No, it was, once you animate, it's just applying the same principles.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You just have to learn how to get the same shapes with a rig.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I tell my students. When you're animating, don't animate body parts. Animate the shape.
Mm.
Make the shapes move and make them look good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Like
Ryan Woodward. If you look at some of his animation, like we were talking about before, the thought of you. He used to work on air as well. He was an effects artist, but he animates at parts of that animation, he does these 2D type of swishes and everything almost becomes just a simple geometric shape.
Right.
Then they move back into the form again. Right, into the human.
It's
form.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's and it's beautiful to look at it, these shapes, and so that's if you can animate that way. If you think about when you're creating a pose, create a shape, that kind of thing. So so basically that's what 3D is. It's just trying to get the same thing that you were doing in 2D, but try to do it with the 3D. With a 3D rig.
Gotcha. So did you get some of the shots there that was on the Osmosis Jones?
Yeah, I did. There's a couple of shots in, but they're really small little shots. One of them is he's sort of walking down the stairs, even though he didn't have any legs. He just walked down the stairs. And then another shot where he does a little take, But that's that's fine.
Like you said, it cut your teeth on it.
There was no ego involved. It was just me just trying to learn this.
Trying to learn. That's fantastic. So then that was the last one you worked on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So after Sony, I put a portfolio together some of my own experimentations with, because we were allowed to play with the Iron Giant rig as well. So I did a simple animation with that. Now this would never get me into a studio nowadays, but back then, that kind of animation was like, oh, okay, he's got some 2D experience. Now he's got a little bit of a headway into the 3D stuff. Yeah, let's give a chance on this guy. So then I worked at Sony in their they were doing Stuart Little 2.
Oh, okay.
So I got hired for that. So I went over onto. It went from Sony to Sony, but it was like the other department.
Right.
DreamWorks at that point.
Now, you were obviously animating a lot more on that in CG.
Yeah, and then I was like thrown into it. By first, actually, we weren't on Stuart Little yet. We were doing the first Harry Potter.
Okay.
So I was doing the troll in the bathroom scene on Harry Potter. So I remember staying up until, like, I was sweating it sometimes, like, oh my God, this is not working. So I would stay till 12 o'clock at night trying to get this thing to work the way I wanted it to, so I could show it. But that's how you learn.
I was gonna say, there's many of us who are listening right now who've been through that and doing that at times.
Well, because and I warn students now, like, don't counter animate yourself. We had two controls that would move him, and then I switched at one point midway, and next thing you know, the rig is doing something like, I don't understand. Why is it doing this? And then I found out that I was actually counter animating myself, so I had to go back and muscle my way through that.
Gotcha.
Sweating bullets the whole time. Because I'm still learning.
Something you learn from each project, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but then I'm working. We're doing stuff that's supposed to be on the big screen. This is going to be like for Harry Potter, for God's sake. So we better get this stuff right. Eventually, I learned and became more relaxing.
Did you take your same workflow from 2D into CG?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the big thing, because we had Richard Williams come to Warner Brothers in the 2D days, and the big thing I took from him was the breakdown. Was the breakdown. You have your two keys, and then the transition to go from one key to the other. The magic part of it is the breakdown.
Gotcha.
It's like you can put in overlaps. You can put in. You make a little bit different. It's not just a linear transition, because that's what the computer is going to give you.
So you knew that already. The computer was going to do that.
Yeah, the computer is going to give you that linear transition, but then you just change it a little bit. You see what the computer gives you, and then you just change that breakdown. Maybe you make them go a little bit lower and then higher.
Yeah.
Maybe you delay the head a little bit, where you delay the arm or something like that. Anything just to kind of give it more of a less robotic feel to it. So that's basically the magic part of animation is that breakdown, favoring one or the other poses and things like that. So
now I want to come back here, but I like these little rabbit trails, because you've typically have taught in our earlier level workshops.
Well, I did a bunch of them. I'm teaching
Right.
level 1 now and level
Right.
2. And I used to teach full body acting,
Right.
body mechanics 3. But I really like teaching the first. I like getting people fresh out so that I can fix those bad habits right away and warn them about what not to do with the rig.
Gotcha.
And that way I can sort of like, these are my children, I can push them on to the next level.
Now you
and
can
so,
go, yeah.
Yeah, and people, hopefully they'll go, wow, you're doing a good job. And so, yeah, well, Jim made sure that we know about all the little problems that can happen.
Right.
By not setting up the rig properly.
Right. Now that's what made me think of that, because I know you've taught some of the later workshops as well, but you've been in the earlier workshops as of late.
Yeah, for the last year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it makes sense in light of what you're talking about and how you kind of transition from the 2D into 3D, and a lot knowing the pitfalls or how to set things up, and hey, it's in the breakdown right here, guys. And these are things that you've taken from the 2D here that you learned and quickly to implement into 3D. So
yeah. And then the big thing that I like to stress is the graph editor, and then keeping your curves as clean as possible.
Okay.
And then we have that new program called Animbot. You use Animbot?
Yes, I like Animbot a lot.
That thing has saved my ass so many times. I use that thing extensively, and then I try to turn all my students onto it. And once they get on it, they're hooked.
Yes, yeah.
Because that thing has just completely transformed my workflow.
Absolutely. The anim recovery alone is fantastic.
Oh yeah, for sure. You need that.
You crash your Maya scene and you're like, okay, pulls right back up. Awesome.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
That alone is worth the price.
So many times where I put in 2 hours, didn't know the time went by, and then Maya crashes and your face goes white.
Yes.
And then you just like, I just lost all that work.
When was the last time I hit save?
Oh my God. That's the worst feeling in the world. The blood just rushes from your face.
Yes. We'll have to see if we can get a student discount or something like that for our students. I'll check into that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Animbot's the best, man.
Totally agree. We use it here.
Biggest fan. Sure, I got off on a tangent there, but
yeah. So now that was what you're bringing to your classes here. So now back to you worked on Harry Potter. You worked on Stuart Little at Sony.
Right.
And there, where did you head off?
Then after 2.5 years at Sony, I thought, I'm going to see if I can get into DreamWorks. And so I think at first they were still on Sinbad, and I didn't really want to do 2D anymore.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, at that point, I thought maybe my 2D skills were kind of rusty, and I think, oh man, because I didn't want to compete with all those amazing French animators that can draw circles around everybody. It's like, better not. Anyway, so I wanted to get into 2D. It's like, well, we don't really have anything yet, so I kept waiting until finally Shark Tale came up, and so I applied at that point, and then that's when I transitioned over to DreamWorks.
And I'm sure they were looking for 3D artists at that time pretty heavily.
Yes. Yeah.
Worked out really nice.
Yeah. And that was fun. I had a great ride at DreamWorks. I was there for 8 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's where you knew a lot of the guys that Jason Ryan and
that helped. That's where I met Jason.
Yeah. Start iAnimate.
Came over from he was
Disney.
On Disney.
Yeah.
I think his last one was Chicken Little, I think.
Yeah.
On that point.
You would have worked with him on Monsters vs. Aliens, I think.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the first ones.
That came a little bit later. I was on Flushed Away.
Okay.
Yeah,
he worked on
Over the Hedge.
Yeah.
He did Over the Hedge. I don't know if he worked on that.
No, I think his first one was Monsters vs. Aliens, so that would have been the first one.
Yeah, and then Monsters vs. Aliens. That's right. That's right. I remember. Yeah, because he was just around the hallway.
Okay.
On that.
Now, Shark Tale being one of their early CG ones, was there any things that difficulties that you maybe weren't used to, or was it just that's kind of all you knew, having just come off of a couple other shows that was CG?
I don't know. I just
do you flow into it pretty quick?
Yeah, I kind of adapted pretty easily to that.
Okay.
Knowing what a rig can do now versus you just dealt with it. You know,
Okay.
These are the limitations, and you just do what you can with the rigs and everything. So you just did your best at animating.
Gotcha.
And, you know, it's just a matter of survival and just, you know, being able to keep working.
Yeah. Now, you were used to Disney with a lot of the talent there, but I know, you know, you'd mentioned there was a lot of talent there at DreamWorks coming from their 2D. Was there anybody that kind of stood out to you that was kind of the mentor when you got there fresh to the studio?
Well, Dan Wagner, like I mentioned before, we worked together on at Rich Animation. He was an animator at that time. A damn good 2D animator. He was also at Warner Brothers too. He worked on Quest for Camelot. And so he went to DreamWorks before I did. And he was working on Sinbad and some of the 2D stuff, but he transitioned into 3D. I don't think he wants to go back to 2D. He loves the performance part of it. And he's an amazing performer.
Gotcha.
Dan Wagner is really good. So, you know, I sort of was still under his tutelage in a way.
Nice.
Not as much before. So I was on his team on Kung Fu Panda. So there were a lot of, you know, Dan Wagner's an amazing animator. Probably one of the unspoken great animators, I think.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Unfortunately, his name should be out there more. I wish he got more recognition. But then we had Rudolph Guenedin. We had who's the other guys that were 2D? The French animators. The guy that looks like Einstein. What's his name? Oh, I can't.
Can't think right now.
Yeah. Like, I'm having a brain spasm here. I can't remember. But yeah, we had a lot of great animators at DreamWorks.
Very cool.
I think most of them are still there. Some of them have moved on to other projects. James Baxter.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, but
he was there for a long time.
Yeah, for a really long time.
Yeah.
So he was great to learn from, and then but I think he's working at Netflix now.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some great people to be inspired from. Amazing animation. So yeah, it was great. A great time. Again, it was all learning as much as you can. You never stop learning as an animator. You know, every time you get a new scene, I've never animated a fish before. How do fish move? You know, you have to go and study how fish move. And, you know, how does a certain animals move, and you know, there's always something different. You know, so that's.
I always tell people that's the double-edged sword of animation. The fact that you can keep learning is what kind of drives you, and it makes it fun. The other side, though, is that you never feel like always settled, you know, and so it's always that constant trying to, okay, I gotta keep going here, you know.
Yeah, if you got to keep swimming, you got to keep treading water.
That's right.
If you stop learning, you just start to sink.
You're done there. Yeah. So you mentioned you got to work on Kung Fu Panda 1 and 2, right? 1 and 2, yeah. The first one was huge hit. Did you guys know at the time that you were working on it that it turned out to be so well? It had that same special feeling that the Iron Giant had. Not quite, but we knew that we were working on something kind of special, and unique. And when it came out, we just had the best hopes, but then it became a huge hit. Really great, which spawned 2 and 3. Yeah. Right. And then Puss in Boots, which that was from Puss in Boots was I did work on Puss in Boots, but just like, you know, I was at the end of production, and they were like, I was transitioning off of one show. Oh, I was actually transitioning off of Kung Fu Panda 2, and so I did a few scenes in Puss in Boots, but I really wasn't officially on that show. It just happened. Is there any shots in animation that you gravitate towards? Is it more the acting, more the physicality? Kung Fu Panda obviously had a ton of physicality. Yeah. Did you gravitate towards one or the other? I think maybe for me, more of the dramatic type of animation, where it's kind of like the more serious animation kind of thing. Comedy, I can do it. But I don't know if I have that innate feeling for comic timing. Some people are really, really good at it. I guess you just have to acknowledge what you're good at
not stick with it, but you want to start to push and see what you can do.
Right. That's what was going to be my next question. Then is the shots that you maybe aren't as inclined to. Are there any tricks, so to speak, that you typically would do to gear up for those?
I'll tell you what I want to do. I really want to learn how to do more comic stuff. That really snappy timing. I'm really a big fan of the Cloudy with Chance of Meatballs.
Yes.
Just looking at the crazy poses.
My mind always goes, how do they come up? What would make them think to go that pose?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm with you on that.
It works, but
yes,
man, it's just amazing to look at. Not just with Cloudy, but also with was it Hotel Transylvania?
Yeah.
That's super snappy timing.
Yeah.
And if you go frame by frame, it's like one breakdown, and then they're into that next pose.
Yeah, and then a nice moving hold, and
it's not even a moving hold. Sometimes it's pixel locked, and the only thing that's moving is like the last bit of hair that's kind of catching up. It's like, but it just blends so well, and it's like, why does it work?
Right.
Because when I'm animating, I always want to slow in or overshoot on a pose and settle. Mm-hmm. But why is it? Because when as soon as things pixel lock, it looks wrong to me.
Yeah.
I always feel like it's got to ease in a little bit more. It's just stopped completely, and then it looks wrong. But it looks perfectly fine when you look at Hotel Transylvania. It's like, why is that working?
Yep.
And why do I have this mindset where I can't adjust to that?
I had this one shot I'm working on right now. It's with a dog, and it's kind of acting like it's dead, and all of a sudden it pops up real fast. Yeah. And I'm looking at the head. I'm like, same kind of thing. I'm like, I want to ease into this, but I know my tendency is to do that. Yeah. But as soon as I got the overlap on the ears, it felt fine. That same, almost where it felt like it was hitting, wall, so to speak. Once you get that nice overlap in, it feels.
I think totally the secret is, if you have everything stop at the same time, it's wrong.
Right.
If you have at least one thing that's still moving where everything else is completely locked, it'll be fine. So you have some kind of overlap.
Yeah. Just too funny.
It'll work. It'll work.
Any favorite shows that you worked on at your time at DreamWorks? Because you said you were there for 8 years?
8 years, yeah. I mean, I liked all of them. I think the one I least liked was Flushed Away.
Why is that? I like that one.
Just I don't know. It was kind of tedious. It was a little bit tedious. We also had to make it look kind of like claymation. What did they do?
Stop motion.
Stop motion, stop motion. And so we had to do all the dialogue on twos, step 2.
You didn't care for that?
No, it's fine. I thought it was interesting to do, and we had to, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't flow as well for me.
Okay.
The Kung Fu Panda ones were really fun to work on. Over the Hedge was fun. Shark Tale was it was kind of clunky because the rigs were pretty clunky. And we didn't, I think Finding Nemo was around the same time.
Yeah.
As that, and the way they analyzed how fish swim, and we didn't do that at DreamWorks. Everybody had their own way of how a shark would move, and it wasn't consistent, and there was nobody kind of directing that.
Gotcha.
And I wish that we had, we really spent a lot more time trying to make it, put more analysis into the mechanics of how fish are swimming. And there was no classes on it. We didn't, they should have had a big, huge aquarium so that we could just look at fish. Or something like that. So I love the characters. Will Smith was one of the voices. And that was fun because I had a couple of shots with him.
Very cool.
And the Kung Fu Panda ones were probably the most fun to do.
Any characters particular that in that span that you really loved working on?
Well, I love working on Poe. I had a lot of Poe shots, and then I had Goose Dad. I don't think we had a name for him. He was just Goose Dad. Did he have a name? I don't know.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. He was called Dad, obviously.
It just was always Dad.
Yeah.
Dad. So he was kind of fun the way he moved.
Long neck.
And so I never got one of the fight scenes though. I kind of wished I worked on that. That's
Okay.
a super mechanic.
Yeah.
Like one of my supervisors was Philip LeBron, and then I think he got an Annie nomination for his work on that. He was really good at doing
a lot of the fight scenes.
Yeah, I mean they were super smooth. You know, they were like there was nothing. Your eye just was blended into the fight really.
Gotcha.
Nice. And, you know, it didn't stop or start or felt, you know, jilted.
Yeah.
It had a really nice flow to all his fight scenes, so he was really good at that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So now, then you would have been. So when you finished at DreamWorks, I know you've been to China. You've been to.
China, I was just teaching. I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Argentina.
Just did a seminar. In Argentina, yeah. So so at DreamWorks, they had this ambition. They hired a lot of people. They were going to do 3 features a year, and then they said, "Oh, you know what? We can't." So my contract was up, so I got laid off. So you know that happens. People get laid off. So I was like, okay, I had a good run, 8 years. What am I going to do now? So I was applying everywhere, and I applied at Disney. And Disney said, "Yeah, I think you can come aboard with us. We're going to work on Monsters. What is it? Wreck-It Ralph." So
okay,
it's like, and I was talking to the supervisor of there, and he says, "Yeah, we're starting a brand new crew. We feel like we're just starting new, and we're going to build a studio from them because they were not doing so well with some of the other projects." Like, I thought, yeah, that sounds good, but I had this other offer to go to Argentina. Work on this, Spanish movie called Metagol, which is basically Argentinian word for foosball.
Yeah.
So these foosball Toy Story characters that were coming to life. And I wanted to shock my system. I wanted to do something different. So I said, thank you, Disney, but no, I'm going to go to Argentina. How stupid was that, huh? I could have been working maybe, on Frozen 2. So anyway, things happen for a reason. I had the greatest time in Argentina. I met a lot of new people.
That's awesome.
I expanded my whole sense of the world, working in a different country.
Very cool.
Made a lot of friends, and a
lot of great food.
Be honest with you, the food is not so amazing in Argentina. They love pizza, and they don't like spicy food down there.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. So not quite like Mexico, huh?
No, it's not.
How long were you there for?
A whole year and 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
¿Tú hablas inglés or español?
Poco.
Okay.
Poquito. Is it poquito or poco?
Poquito.
Poquito.
Yeah.
¿Hablas español?
Yo aprendo español. I'm learning it. I'm learning it. Yes.
Yo. You don't say yo. You just say aprendo.
Aprendo. Sí.
Yeah, it's more like Latin when they speak.
I'm probably learning it too formal.
Yo. And then, but the Argentinians, they speak a little bit different than like the Colombian. Colombian Spanish to me is like the standard of South American.
Okay.
I like the way they sound. But Argentina, instead of saying yo, they say show. Everything is with an SH. And instead of tortilla, they say tortilla.
Okay. Interesting.
So they have a different way of speaking. And they speak Spanish with an Italian accent. So they have the thing, they talk like it is, but it's in Spanish, and and they talk with their hands, but it's all in Spanish.
See, that's what's great, that you're traveling around. You get to see the different cultures and stuff.
Oh yeah, it was great. And I went to Uruguay. Went to with a buddy of mine who was also from United States, was working there.
Okay.
And we went to Rio de Janeiro together.
Oh wow.
Carnival, and that was crazy. So yeah, we had some amazing times, and so after that I came back
to the U.S. or to Canada.
To U.S.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did some freelance for real effects on the bird movie. The turkey movie. Free Birds.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I got a call. Somebody was asked to supervise this movie. They were looking for somebody to supervise the movie, and they were looking outside of Canada. And so he said he recommended me, and so I talked to them. Since I was already a Canadian citizen.
Right.
It wasn't a big stretch for me to kind of like move to Canada. So they asked if I wanted to supervise. Like, okay, I haven't really done that before, but I'm up for the challenge. And so I headed up and moved to Canada.
What was some of the biggest hurdles learning to be a supervising animator?
This is where iAnimate comes in, because when you're teaching, you're kind of supervising in a way.
That's, yeah.
Are you teaching it?
No, but that makes sense because I've worked with supervising animators and things of that nature where it's very similar in that nature.
Yeah.
You're teaching.
So that was my training ground to be in supervisor. Because when you're teaching, you always have to think, okay, why do I know this? And how do I communicate what I know?
Right.
Right. So that's the thing. Like when I was growing up, I wanted to be an artist, but my parents, my brother's an engineer, my father's an engineer, my uncle's an engineer, my nephew's an engineer. They're all civil, electrical, chemical engineers. So it's all like,
Uh-huh.
And now I was the one wanting to be an artist, and they looked at me like, why do you want to be an artist? and so whenever I was learning about art, teaching myself to draw, I was always kind of like teaching in a way. I was translating everything. Now, Jim, this is what you need to do. And I have a teaching voice in my head. So that's whenever I'm learning something, like in something in the art, like how do I know what I know? That kind of thing.
Right.
So that attitude goes into supervising. Like, when you're teaching, when you're telling somebody it needs to be this way, you kind of have to give them an explanation of why. If you give them the why, it allows them to go into the task with a little bit more confidence, and knowing that someone also has their back, but also is giving them the reason why that they're working on something. So it's grounding them in terms of their learning process in animation, especially when you're teaching, or if you're supervising junior animators, because basically it's all teaching them anyway.
Right. Did you find it difficult to give notes, or was that come pretty easy?
No, it was pretty easy.
Okay.
It's like a lot of the problems that junior animators have, and a lot of animators have, is just spacing issues. And
okay.
It's just fixing the spacing issues.
Gotcha.
It's like they have the right pose, they have the right idea. It's just that it's not looking as good as it could be on the screen because the spacing is kind of messing things up. So.
Gotcha.
A lot of that is, and then plus, communicating what the director wants and being able to communicate that vision, and learning about the story, making sure that they have the story in mind when they're teaching.
Right.
When they're animating. Right.
Yeah. So you that was 2 projects there?
At Singing Frog?
Yeah.
We did La Guerre de Toque, which is French for the War of, a toque is what you wear in the winter, the hat. Right?
Okay.
So it makes a lot of sense in French. It's the war of the hats, but it's the snow hats. It's the kids that have a snow fight, and they're bored during the winter break, right? And so like, what do you want to do? Why don't we have a snow fight? So they have a snow fight, but the snow fight gets out of hand. Right. And so they have to learn the lesson that, okay, we can have fun, but maybe war is not a good way to go about it. And it's based on an old French-Canadian 1984 film of the same name.
Okay.
They just turned it into a cartoon.
An animated movie. Okay.
So I had a built-in audience for Quebec. And the thing that I'm proud of is the fact that of all the Canadian films, homegrown Canadian films, our film made the most money for Canada. We got the award for the most that brought in homegrown Canadian revenue. We won the award.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
very cool.
And because of the success of that, we did the second one.
Oh, very
cool. It was what was it called in French? La course de Toque.
Okay, so is that a follow-up, or?
It was a race, because now they're into the race. This time, they have sleds. Everybody builds their own sleds. It's kind of like a soap. What do you call it? Those,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Soap cars or something.
Yes.
Soapbox cars.
Box cars. Yeah.
Soapbox cars. Yeah. But it's with sleds, going down because it's winter,
Yeah.
Montreal, we have these long winters and we have a lot of snow. What else is there to do?
That's right.
So then, so that was La Course de Tuc. Or now it was because we couldn't translate the title into English. It didn't make any sense, the War of the Hats. And besides, all the marketing people said you can't use the word war, can't use the word fight. So but this is what this is. They can say it in French, but apparently in English we're not allowed to say it.
Really? Okay.
So they were for the longest time, everybody's struggling. What are we going to call it? So they came up with the name Snow Time. Snow Time
doesn't quite have the intrigue, I guess.
Oh my God, Snow Time. All right. So that was the English name for it, and then the La Course means the race, right? Course is the race.
Okay.
The Course de Tuc. The Tuc is the hat.
Uh-huh.
So that was translated into race time. So the English version is race time. But we animated first in English and then they dubbed it into French. So all the lip sync is going to be off in French, but in English it's spot on. We did everything in English.
Now, what was just because you knew it was a larger audience?
Yes.
Because you were doing it more for the homegrown in there in Canada, right?
Yeah. Well, all of Canada. So Quebec.
True. Montreal's the French portion. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Canada's French, but plus we wanted to have it so that it could be shown in other countries besides just Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming you speak French as well?
Well, je parle français.
Okay, that's where I'm done there. I'm done. So you said you're from Canada.
Well, all I said was I'm learning French.
Okay.
Yeah, je apprends.
So where were you originally from Canada then?
Toronto.
Oh, okay.
I spoke English in Toronto.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm still learning French. I've been here 5 years, and French is a very difficult language to learn.
Gotcha.
Because of the way they speak, they don't pronounce the last letters. It's like, what does that mean? I can't spell it. I don't know what you're saying.
So you've been there for 5 years, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see yourself sort of something else coming along here, kind of continue in that area? That's obviously a very growing area.
Here's the weird thing. I'm now working for a studio, and I'm back to 2D again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm working with Toon Boom.
Oh, awesome.
2D. Yeah, I'm working on. I did some Looney Tunes stuff with Bugs Bunny.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we're doing stuff now for Bento Box, and I can't say what we're going to be working on, but we're going to get some more. Well, I think I can say that we're going to get more Looney Tunes stuff. So I'm going to be animating more Bugs Bunny stuff.
That's awesome.
I'm back to 2D, and I was really intimidated at first because first of all I don't know how to use Toon Boom. I had to learn the software quickly. So I started picking up some freelance from the studio, and then now I'm working there full time.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, so I haven't done, well, I did do, I supervised a commercial there as well.
Okay.
For 3D, for animation. It was like, they had this little character for selling Jameson vitamins, and he was saying, hey, you should buy our vitamins, And so I animated that, and I supervised a junior animator on that.
That's great.
Well. So I'm doing kind of both because they're a production house, and they get clients, and so we do commercials, and we're doing all kinds of work for different studios now.
Now we talked about the 2D Snappies, we talked about the Snappy animation. Are you getting used quite a bit in that?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah. My God, was it snappy? I couldn't believe it. And just bang, getting into those overshoots and settles and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was so much fun. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I can't believe I'm here,
That's
and
great.
At first, when I was looking for work after La Course de Tuc, and like, where do we want to work? And then I just applied at the jobs. Hey, do you do any 3D work? I said, no, but I think you might be good for 2D. They're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, we saw your reel. Let's give you a shot at 2D. I'm like, are you crazy? I haven't done it for 25 years. I don't know. I'm kind of like, don't worry about it. So they gave me some shots, and I struggled a little bit at the beginning trying to get my legs back, but I finally got it.
That is so cool. That is so cool. You I hope you don't take this the wrong way. You kind of remind me of the Renaissance man, where it's like you got a bit of just everything. Like I said, when I started looking at your bio and the 2D, the CG, the VFX, and then now like you're talking about again.
VFX, we didn't really talk about that much because in between the two singing frog shows, I worked at Framestore.
Yeah, on the Beauty and the Beast, right?
Beauty and the Beast, yeah. And I did some stuff like Lumiere. I did some animation in the piano, walking the piano. So I had to learn all that.
Did you find that challenging working in VFX?
It's a different animal, though. It's a different animal.
How so?
I guess a lot of guys from iAnimate are moving on to VFX. And so in 2D, the main difference, not 2D, but in 3D animation, even 2D, you have a certain amount of time for a shot, right? And if it's like 125 frames, you're supposed to get it out maybe within a week or so. You can get that same 125 frames in visual effects, and you could be working on that for months. Believe it or not.
Why? Just because the notes keep coming back, or what?
Because there's so many layers of approvals. You go to your supervisor, and then this has to go, and then eventually goes to the client in Los Angeles, and they look at it, and they have a different. So it might be you might get something completely different than what, as far as what they want, and then they say, and one criticism like, well, move on frame 45, move it over here, and have them look at this character, and so you do that, and it's like every time there's always a little bit more. And this can go on for months. So you're working on, maybe 5 shots.
Right.
All 5 shots are taking months before they become actually approved.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that they get approved because they finally
run out of time.
The deadline. Yeah. And they can't noodle it anymore. so they have to say, okay, it's good enough at this point.
Man. Now, okay. I'm a pretty, I have a wrestling background, so I'm a pretty tenacious guy where it's like the idea of giving up, it's foreign to me. But I've had shots like that where it feels like it just won't leave my realm here. And I can imagine when you're working on something like that for months, you're just like, we enjoy animation, but it's one of those things you're like, can I just finish this here?
Yeah, exactly. And at some point, and this has happened as well, I was kind of lucky on Beauty and the Beast, but when I was working on another show, you could get someone else's shot and say, okay, you have to, because he's moved on to something else.
Oh, goodness.
That shot is still lingering and that needs to be done. So you get the shot, or you give up one of your shots and it goes to someone else. So it's a different way of thinking. I think the reason why is because animation and visual effects, they kind of were working parallel and moving in this certain direction almost, but they're not intersecting at all.
Gotcha.
And so the language and the process is a little bit different.
Right.
Games is probably even more so. I've never really worked in games, so I don't know what that's like at all. So I'm imagining that they have their own way of working.
Right.
Their own language that they.
Yeah.
It's all animation, but somehow they're not connected.
Yeah, we recently did a podcast, but I've done plenty of podcasts with game animators, and Rick Arroyo, who heads up our game animation.
Right.
He's mentioned that
he's here in Montreal.
Oh yeah, he is. That's funny. Yeah. But he says, as an animator, you're not just an animator; you're a game developer, because one of the things you're doing is you aren't just animating; you're animating to responsiveness and how it, feels hooked up to a controller when the player pushes the button, it's got to feel, so he goes, you're animating just like you said, it's all animation, but you've got to do things a little bit differently from games to VFX to, so that's interesting.
Although I have to say about the visual effects people, I really respect what they do, because I just saw The Lion King.
Yeah.
And man, that is just incredible what they can do.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one yet, but I did see The Jungle Book.
And the Jungle Book as well.
Same thing.
Yeah.
And
John Favreau, I think, was the director for both of those. But yeah, the
it's
the
remarkable
way that they analyzed animal motion. That tell that's that's CG. It's amazing.
It is.
Really
When
amazing.
I know the field and I'm sitting here looking, I'm going, I know the hat trick here, and it's still convincing.
Yeah. Well, they have these other things, like it's a muscle-based system, so they put the jiggle in, and
Right.
That helps a little bit.
Yeah.
That I do remember from being in there, but one of the things I have to tell, just a quick short story about at the Framestore, is that we had the Mrs. Potts, right, the teapot.
Yeah.
It should be a simple rig, but what they ended up doing is they put a muscle system in that rig, and so it was very heavy, it was very difficult, and it was very slow. And this should have been a lightning fast rig. You should have been able to scrub through that and make the decisions, but they insisted that it had to be a muscle system to do this, because that's just the way they did it, And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And a simple, getting into simple mouth shapes, it was, we have to abductor muscle, and they had all kinds of names for this, and it was driving us nuts.
Well, Jim, I do appreciate your time very much. It's been great.
Yeah.
I've been working with you with iAnimate for a long time, but this is the first time I got to get you in on this, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. It's been great. Great talking to you.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Well, definitely check out Jim's workshops. He's been great having here, and obviously you can look at his bio here and just this podcast, which has been amazing to see what he's been up to. So it's always great having guys like you with that much experience teaching here. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
All right.